If the agencies review the filing and find that there's no issues, the waiting period will expire. There used to be something called a grant of early termination that is still in the rules. However, it's been suspended since 2021. So right now the waiting period lasts the full time for most transactions. If the agencies determine that they need to ask more questions, they have a tool. One of those tools is a voluntary access letter. Some of you might be familiar with that. During the waiting period, you get a voluntary access letter. You try to respond to the letter, and either the agencies have more questions, they can issue a second request. Parties can pull and refile, restarting the clock, or the transaction is cleared within the 30 days. If the agencies still have questions, that's when you all come in as vendors and eDiscovery practitioners and a second request is issued. Today, the HSR filing requires some documents. Sometimes eDiscovery vendors are brought in. It requires a short narrative of the transaction, revenues by NAICS code, a list of entities, and some overlap information. In June of last year, though, these proposed rulemaking came out for the HSR. The first major overhaul since that 1976 Act came out for the HSR, and it significantly increases the amount of information, the amount of documents that are required for the HSR filing. And so what I would predict is that eDiscovery is going to become part of the HSR process going forward if those rules are finalized. And what we learned last week, which is some breaking news, is that the agency said we should expect the final rules to come out in the coming weeks, not months. They haven't issued a date, but what we would expect is the final rules to be published with a time that they will become effective. It's unclear whether it would be 30, 60, 90 days. That question was asked last week at the spring meeting, and the answer was they didn't know. So that will be new news.
From a work stream or workflow perspective, tell us about the deviation from the status quo.
Sure. So in the status quo, I would say the filing is pretty straightforward. You do have to collect a certain subset of documents. The proposed rules, though, significantly expand the scope, both in terms of the custodians, the types of documents requested, and there's this category which we'll touch later, which is all agreements between the parties. And as many of you know, when you're collecting documents, all agreements between the parties in a large company or even in a small company, different business units might keep their documents separately, so there might not be one place where you can just hit a button and all of the agreements come to you.